This is Athletes as Educators with former pro basketball player, championship winning coach, and author Angela R. Lewis. Angie Lewis interviews current and former athletes who are passionate about sharing the lessons they've learned and the experiences that have shaped their lives. A resource for parents, a guide for student athletes, a source for current and former athletes, keys to transition off the court. Welcome to the Athletes as Educators podcast with Angela R. Lewis.
Welcome to this episode of the podcast. This is segment 1 for today, where we're talking about athletes who are authors, athletes who've been in books. And on this episode today, I'm recapping an interview I had with Peppi Browne-Armstrong. Peppi contributed to a book called Post Moves, The Female Athlete's Guide to Dominate Life After College. And I met Peppi through a mutual friend, and they said you have to talk to her. She's really passionate about helping young athletes, and reach out to her, talk to her, and her passion for helping young people, especially young women, learn about how to transition is pretty amazing. When in this interview, you're going to hear about how Peppi strategically planned her college experience outside of sports. She played basketball at Duke, and she did some things such as not living with her teammates to make sure that she was in tune with what was happening on campus. She talked about going to college fairs, just really making sure that she was set up for success afterwards. She even played in the WNBA, and she has this really awesome story about having a job and how she negotiated that so that she could still play in the WNBA. And so love this conversation with Peppi, and I know you're going to love it too if there are young women who are college athletes and who are thinking about their next steps. Post Moves, The Female Athlete's Guide to Dominate Life After College is this great compilation of 15 women who are former college athletes who share their experiences, and they're all so diverse. Check this interview out. Remember, you can always reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram at Angie_R_Lewis, or you can also reach out to me on Facebook at Angie R. Lewis or the Global Athlete Media Network's Facebook page. Enjoy. Peppi, will you please give our listeners a little more insight about who you are, what you're doing now?
Sure. Well, I said I am working for IBM. I also am co-owner of a podiatry office that my husband, who's the actual podiatrist, I just kind of go in and fix things when they break.
Okay.
But do have that, and then just basically started my own business, docents.com, and where, like you said, we are basically striving to even the playing field among college athletes or college-bound athletes, whether domestically or overseas as well. I think a lot of it is a matter of information not getting dispersed appropriately, and so we're helping to kind of bridge that gap and doing something there.
What you're doing is so important. I know you get asked all the time, how do you get to college and how do you play sports in college? Will you talk about the college recruiting process for you and how things were for you?
Sure. I mean, I feel like I had a really, really good college recruiting process in general. All that being said, I think I was also very lucky having had a parent who went through that process. Although, mind you, he wasn't domestic. My family came from the West Indies, Guyana specifically. So of course they didn't have email back in the early 70s, 60s, so on and so forth. So he wrote letters to the different colleges and had saying this is what I do. This is he played soccer at Clemson, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So that whole process, or having him go through that process, enabled, I think, for myself and my sister and several of my cousins to kind of go through that process it was a much smoother transition for us.
Got you.
But with technology nowadays, now there's information flying everywhere, so you never know where you're going to get it or where it's going to come from. So that also just adds to the complexity of things, I think.
It does. It definitely makes it more difficult to figure out who to take information from and who to get information from. But it sounds like what's key is that you're proactive. It sounds like that's what your family did. You were proactive in the process. Will you talk a little bit more about how you can be proactive and how docents can be used as a resource?
Sure. So what we did at Docents is we basically used, we took a conglomeration of college sports data. Obviously, that, the big sports, the footballs, the basketballs, that type of thing, there's a lot of information on that all over the place. But even for the smaller non-revenue sports, that information is there as well. We want to promote athletics across the board, not just with the ones that are always readily visible. So basically within our database, within our system, we have all that, and we offer that information to everybody. And this is not only schools within the United States, but schools within Canada as well. Basically every school that you could go to and play a sport while you were in college, which of course widens kind of the spectrum for most people, just opening them up to possibilities that they didn't even know really existed for things that they love to do. And why not do those things, while you're in school, bettering your education? So our goal, again, is to tie both of those together, but, kind of open it up for possibilities for kids and their parents, of course, because they're going through this the same way with their children, and help them be a little bit more grounded. So it's more of a decision, again, that you're proactively seeking out, and then ends up having a better match, not only for the student and the parent, but also for the college as well, which at the end of the day will result in a more fulfilling college athletic and academic experience.
You're absolutely right. And I love docents because you get a bracket, right? And
Yes.
We're approaching March Madness and all the craziness that happens around this time of year. And so the product that you created is directly aligned with what we already know.
Correct.
But oftentimes high school athletes don't know all of the options. And so to have 64 options minimally that they can then be proactive and follow up with is really helpful.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we use the bracket, like you said, because everybody already knows about it, but it's a way to gamify what could rather be a daunting process.
Exactly.
At the same time, part of my background, or part of my educational background, I basically studied, from different marketing techniques to decision-making tools and that type of thing. And at the end of the day, most people really only get down to choosing between two things at a time, which made the whole bracket process just that much easier. So even though, yes, like you said, at a minimum, you can get 64 schools maybe in your bracket, depending on how specific your requests are. Mm-hmm. But as you go through the bracket, you really, again, are only deciding between two schools at a time, which makes the whole process, again, a lot easier. We also are basically enabling it so that you can, if you didn't know about a school that shows up in your bracket, you can readily, again, be proactive and go out and find that information for you, for your decision-making purposes.
This is going to be revolutionary for so many athletes and for parents, because it's going to put them in a position to really be in the driver's seat of their future, instead of waiting to hope that someone contacts them. Every coach out there can't possibly find every player. There's too many players.
Right.
It's not possible. So to be able to have this as a resource is going to be great. Peppi, let's take a few steps back. Tell us when you started playing and how did you fall in love with basketball?
To be honest, I actually didn't start playing basketball until I moved to Maryland. As I said before, I was playing soccer probably when I started to walk. It was that soon, that early. So I was playing soccer much, much longer than I was playing basketball. But I also grew, obviously. So, at the time, I actually had one of my soccer coaches who also coached basketball was like, oh, you know what, you're kind of tall. Maybe you'd like to try it, whatever. And, me, I'll try any sport. I don't care. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. And I loved it. So growing up all the way up through high school, I basically just played basketball and soccer the whole time. When I started to get a little bit more, I guess, success in basketball as well as soccer, at the end of the day, I will preface this by saying My dad is majored in math and accounting. So we have a tendency, my dad and I have a tendency to look at things in a mathematical way,
Okay.
to say. So again, when it came time from high school to say, okay, what are you going to go to high school with? I mean, I'm getting letters from both sides. We ended up deciding to play, for me anyway, to play basketball in college just because the odds of getting a full scholarship are much higher.
That's a great point.
And it's not something that most people also think of when they think of, selecting a college or selecting a sport even. Of course, there's so many kids out here that are playing multiple sports. But at the grand scheme of things, if you think about it, right, the soccer team has roughly 22 or some odd people, but per class, you have, well, not per class, but I should say how many scholarships are offered. There's probably about 12, 13 maybe, right?
Exactly.
For basketball, it's roughly that same number, maybe a couple more, like at 15, but how many basketball players do you really need on a team? Probably like 12, 13. So again, if you look at it that way from a mathematical standpoint, the odds are was greater for me, or really for anybody. The odds haven't changed since then, but to play basketball instead. And it's not that I loved one sport more than the other. I love them equally, but at the end of the day, I have to do what's right for me. At the same time, unfortunately, I couldn't play both in college because the soccer season was actually before the basketball season. So if my scholarship was in basketball, I couldn't, and I get hurt playing soccer, and it was a lot. There was a lot more thought into it, which I'm hoping, through my company, that we can get people to start thinking that way, start thinking again in a more proactive way, doing what's best for you, based off of what you like to do, not only in sport, but in education. So all of that factored into my decision-making process.
It's hard sometimes for parents to make the decision and for players to make the decision, especially when they're like you were and you love two sports. And so thank you for sharing your logic behind your decision-making, because the goal of this podcast is to give perspective so that parents and players can have more information to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Will you talk a little bit about how you use what you learned in soccer on the court? We have a lot of 2, maybe 3 sport athletes.
Yes.
How did they work together for you?
I will say, and even to this day, I have kids. I will probably encourage them to play both sports.
Okay.
What helped me for sure in soccer was my footwork. You've seen many times on the basketball court where they say, this person, they got great footwork. They got, they have great this, that, and the other. Hands down, I think soccer helped me with that. At the same time, you have, on a soccer field, it's much, much larger, right? And you have much more space around you. You're more aware of who is next to you, who's around you, because in general proximity, not for the most part, you're kind of, maybe 6 feet away from maybe your next local player. And that being said, because the field is so large, anticipation is key. So you have to kind of think 2 or 3 steps ahead in order to figure out where you want to go, or else you will be running yourself ragged. I will also say being in soccer shape is the best thing ever, because when I transitioned from, whatever the season was, after playing soccer to basketball in this case, you couldn't stop me. I was in such good shape. Even in college, I played 40 minutes several times. That's not fairly common, but again, I was already trained from a young age to be able to run, continuously. There are a couple of stats there that say, when you're playing soccer, you're probably running a good 5 miles just within the 90-minute period, which you don't do at all in basketball or some of the
not
other
at all.
sports. But it's something where, it kind of goes by. You don't realize you're running that often or running that long or, what have you, but you do. So I think that also, again, attributed to me being successful in basketball. At the same time, just from basketball, being, the short quickness, just, moving faster to the ball, anticipating to the ball, again, transition back onto the soccer field helped me tremendously, because I had that quick step. I had that ability to beat people to the ball when needed. So for me, it was the win-win. It worked out.
Right. So Peppi, you would run circles around everyone since you're in such good shape. And what I hear you saying is that preseason conditioning wasn't hard for you?
Yeah, that is exactly.
Wow.
Yes. I looked at the preseason. I remember I looked at the preseason book and I was like, man, this is a joke.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Oh, it was horrible for me. It was so hard.
And I can see it for most people. And I felt bad in a way. And I'm like, all right, there were some times where we would get on the track and, coach is like, okay, you got to make this time and, mile in this time. I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to make it this time. I'm tired of seeing you guys not falling behind, not making it so you had to run it again. All right, everybody, look, I'm going to run up. I'm going to be the pacemaker. Just keep me in your sights and we will all make it through.
You and that teammate. Okay.
I was the big pacemaker. I got in trouble, oddly enough, one time. Because I was the pacemaker, coach was like, I know you could be gonna get him in like 6 minutes and whatever. And I was like, yeah, I could have, but I got tired of people not making it. So then we're actually worrying about finishing out your preseason as opposed to playing basketball. So it's like, look, you're just gonna have to just, whatever. And I was like, at this point.
Teammate.
Yeah, at this point, I'm like, if people don't know by now that I will run circles around you, I have nothing to prove. Like, it's just going to happen. That's just because I was in shape. But doing pool laps, I'm like, okay, let's get in the pool. All right.
Oh my God,
laps,
Peppi.
Be out.
Yeah. So the closest thing I came to a second sport in high school was shot put. So shot put did not prepare me for basketball like soccer did for you. And I did that like 1 year and it was over.
That was it.
Yep, that was it. But I regret in hindsight, I regret not playing another sport. The volleyball coach tried to get me to play volleyball and they wore little spandex and I was self-conscious. I was like, no. I'm not about to be walking around in spandex. I'll just stick to hooping. But there's definitely value, as you mentioned, in playing other sports that work other muscles. What's your advice for parents who have kids who are playing multiple sports? How long do they keep playing? When should they stop? What's been your experience there?
Again, I didn't stop really playing two sports till I got to college.
Okay.
I think partially because I loved it. It wasn't something that for me felt like a chore. I will say, kind of going back, let's go back to sort of, the biomedical podiatry, things that I do on the side. Well, not on the side, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing more general overuse injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's many articles related to that. And on the top of which, playing one sport, let alone multiple sports, can be a strain on your bank account.
Right. Very good point. Mm-hmm.
So, as with everything, there has to be balance, and good balance, right? You want the kid to practice so that they learn the discipline of practicing, which could transfer into obviously, doing your homework, having the discipline to do that, and having making a schedule and that type of thing. So I don't discourage doing multiple sports. Again, for me, it was like it was transition from going from a hard floor to nice soft grass,
right,
or playing in the rain to, oh man, I'm in the dry part now. Like it was, you get a sense of appreciating both sides of the sport, which again, for me, it was like, okay, am I wearing my cleats today? Am I wearing my shoes? What am I doing? Just pace yourself.
But you mentioned that you love it. There are some times when parents want these opportunities for their kids because they know it's good for them, but the kids just don't quite want it. How have you helped parents come to grips with having to let it go?
Well, oddly enough, I haven't really had too much of that experience just yet. Most of the time, it's the kid, how I get involved anyway, is the kid really loves playing whatever sport it is and just wants to go as far as they can. in the sport and the parent's like, I don't know what to do, or, you know, I don't want the reality brick to hit them, or, you know, that type of thing. That's mainly of what I see. Again, I don't discourage anybody from wanting to try and play a sport in college.
Okay.
I do think, one, you have to be realistic, yes, but many times people are just, again, not aware of their options, especially if the adults didn't come from that world, right? They're just like, oh, you know what, in North Carolina, we've got so many big colleges around here, big and small, and even smaller ones that people just totally overlook because they're like, oh, you know what, they didn't call me, they didn't. No, if that was your kid wants to do, I mean, I will say, even if you don't get a full or half scholarship, or partial, I want to say quarter, whatever, you don't get any type of scholarship money, I still advocate them doing that because it's the easiest way to get into college to begin with. So let's, for example, you go to a D3 school. Yes, they don't have athletic scholarships, but you do well enough in school. The coach, you know, whatever sport it is, will help the kids try to find some type of money.
Right.
On top of which, if you do sign with this particular school, now how many applications do you have to fill out? One.
Yep. A lot less.
Yep. Right. How many transcripts do you have to get? One set. I don't know, you know, about other high schools, but my high school allowed us to get, you know, one transcript for free. So guess what I paid for my transcript? Nothing. Allowed to get, you know, you had to do your essays. Sure, you had to do your essays, but, you know, there wasn't pressure doing the essays. I took my time. Exactly. And, you know, whatever. And then I sent it in. I didn't send it in, you know, with everybody else who was trying to apply to do. No, I sent my packet in to my coach. Exactly. And then they turned around and sent it up there. So, you know, again, you got to think about it of, okay, you know, you could apply to 10 schools and then you have to pay the application fee each time, right? Again, my high school allowed for, because they want everybody to go to college, to pay for one application fee. Okay, I knew what school I was going to, so that was done. Paid for the college transcript or the high school transcript. I had to pay for one. That was done. So that's, again, no money, no additional money out of the pocket, just because you were proactive in getting to a school that matched you. So, you know, don't overlook, you know, any parent. Again, if you've never been in that space, I totally understand. But don't overlook, you know, your kid's drive and ability, because that will take you many times much further than somebody who just has talent and just kind of just wastes it, right? Don't overlook that. They can still go to college and get a great degree, get a great opportunity, and you never know who you're going to meet on the sporting field. So,
exactly. You make a really good point, and I've never heard anyone say it that way, to pursue college athletics as a strategy for entrance into a school. That's essentially what you're saying.
For general entrance, yes.
Right, for general entrance, because you're absolutely right. Coaches need players to play on their team. So if you're looking for a college to go to, find one that has an athletic. It doesn't have to be Division I. I know that we get so caught up on the schools that are on TV and everyone wants to go big time, but there are a lot of really good schools with really competitive teams that are Division II, Division III, NAIA.
Yep.
Junior college, NJCAA. You know, there are more options than we know. And there are coaches who are looking for players who really want to be there. So if your kid is passionate about it, then work to help them find a school that will be a good fit, and it will be more, it will be a little easier to get in, because the coaches have influence and impact on the players that they need.
That's right.
That's
and
such
they
a great
do.
point.
And our program, again, clearly it does, you know, NCAA D1, but it has D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, or like you said, NJAA, as well as the CIS, which is the Canadian system.
That's right.
So you have 4-year options, you have 2-year options. Not everybody is cut out automatically for a 4-year option, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they don't need to pursue their athletic goals. Again, it's a matter of knowing what your options are, and that is basically where our program, I think, stands well above the rest, is that we are giving you all the options. I think our next phase, because we've been getting a lot of interest from overseas, students overseas, our next phase is to have it available in some of the top languages in the world. A lot of the people are trying to come. It's like my family, obviously my dad did not live in the States when he got recruited. He sent the letter. But not everybody, now we have Skype. Now we've got, I had a young lady from France who Skyped her coach.
Wow.
She's now in Nevada, but Skyped her coach from France and, talked to them that way. And then when she made her visits to the States, she already at least knew about the program, talked to them at least, not face to face, but, you saw their face, that type of thing. So we're going to get, I think, much more of those. And then from a global aspect, everybody deserves a right to a proper education. Exactly. And if sports helps them do that, then I say, by all means, let's go forward.
Definitely go for it.
Yeah. This is a social aspect that I think is very much overlooked within athletics. People always see, oh, this person making that much money. And you have, obviously, debates on, should people get paid in school while they're at college, or, look at this $1.2 billion signed contract, such and such person got. I mean, there's more to it than that. There really is. And I think we just need to make that conversation a little bit more vocal as opposed to some of the other, maybe not enlightening conversations that we have these days.
I'm with you 110%. Let's talk a little bit about college. What was it like playing at Duke, Shasheskyville, Cameron Crazies? How was that experience being at Duke?
Well, I will say I love Duke. I do. I had a great time. Wouldn't trade it for the world. When I first got there, we were probably maybe mid-level tier team. We went to the NCAAs. Even my freshman year, but I don't think we were ranked at the time or something to that effect, but you still had Cameron. If you've never been in Cameron, or anybody listening has ever been in Cameron, it's probably the size of I would say it's definitely the size of my high school gym, because my high school was massive, but it's not that big. It really isn't. And if you have, for some reason, a size 20 shoe, like maybe some of the guys do, you can't put your foot straight at the check-in table, and you will be on the court, right? It's really small. But the atmosphere is great. I mean, when you had the big games, it was deafening. They even have a little place now on the Hall of Fame thing that's called the Cameron Experience. You kind of go in this little cubby, and you push this button, and it's like loud, and it's crazy. So, and I will say I do kind of take it for granted because, and I probably still do to this day, because again, some of my worst practices were probably there. We get in trouble if we're just running and sweating and whatever. So I don't have my view of Cameron is a little bit different than maybe most people's view of Cameron, or anybody who really practiced or played in Cameron. I'll say that. Every time, visitors come, it's like, oh my gosh, it's Cameron. And they're, taking their selfies with the D on the floor. And, oh, can I shoot a shot? And I'm like, all right, go ahead. Sure. Like, it's different for me. I understand the whole, hype about it. I get it. And, and you can easily get caught up and it's great. I just, like I said, I have a little bit different perspective because I've, been drooling all over the floor or dying,
Right.
It's a little bit different perspective, but it's great though. I definitely would not trade it for the world.
There is nothing else like it. I went to a game a few years ago, and I stood in a long line to get in with friends. I saw people in the tents. I took a picture in front of the Shasheskyville sign. You don't sit down. I was sweating, just standing there sweating because it's hot. But it was an amazing, amazing atmosphere at Cameron. You did something that a lot of athletes don't do while you were in college. You decided to major in engineering.
Yes.
Since we're talking about college, we talked a little bit about basketball and and what that experience was like, and you sweating and drooling on the floor, and it being difficult. So we know how grueling it can be to be a Division I athlete, especially at a place like Duke. Talk a little bit about how you balanced off the court schoolwork and on the court.
Yeah, my short answer is usually very carefully.
Okay.
The long answer is, I went to a magnet high school.
Okay.
I already was playing, like as we already discussed, both soccer and basketball. And then I had 8 classes because we were in a magnet school. So again, for me, you said, preseason conditioning was hard, wasn't whatever, right? I was already kind of conditioned by the time I got to college, like, all right, well, we're going to play. I mean, it's one sport, but, it's basically a full-time job. And then I'm going to go to school and do my thing, right? Luckily, freshman year, I took several AP college exams, so I was able to lighten the load a little bit. But I didn't start off in the School of Engineering. I started off in Trinity. So one of my majors actually is still in Trinity School. So I still have 3 majors.
Okay, what's Trinity School? I'm not sure what that is.
So Duke undergrad is really split up into 2 schools. So there's Trinity and there's School of Engineering, the Pratt School of Engineering. So Trinity is like the liberal arts side, for lack of a better term, and then of course you got the engineering side. So my Trinity major is, or was, I should say, since I have graduated, yay, a long time ago, biological anthropology and anatomy, and then my engineering degrees are in biomedical and electrical engineering. So
I'm sorry, Peppi, will you say all of that again? Because that's so far over my head. You might be the smartest person I've ever talked to. Like, I have no idea what that means. What was the first one again?
The first one is biological anthropology and anatomy. So it's basically the study of the evolution of man and primates and so on and so forth. Okay. We do everything from dissecting to looking at skulls of different animals, different primates, Australopithecine, all this jazz that I can't believe I still have in my brain right now. But and they even did. I wasn't able to do it because I was at U.S. Nationals, but they go on tours to Africa basically and do fossil digging and that type of thing. But again, I was a little bit indisposed. But that's that side.
Okay.
And then yes, when I got into the School of Engineering or transferred into the School of Engineering, I decided a double major there with biomedical and electrical engineering.
Okay.
Which is kind of self-explanatory, but everybody knows electrical, yes. Biomedical is a little bit more difficult to explain, but just think about it as a merging between circuitry and humans. So,
You know what, Peppi, do us a favor. Do our listeners a favor. Dive a little bit deeper. And here's why. There are a lot of athletes who have no idea, and people in general have no idea what to major in college. And I know I selected my major communications because I took a public speaking class and liked it. But I would have never thought about some of the majors that you've discussed. And part of the gap between opportunity is simply exposure. And yes. So will you say the names of those majors again?
Okay.
And then dive a little bit deeper about what they are, because maybe you spark something with a kid that's listening.
Sure. So let's go back to the beginning. So biological anthropology, anatomy, the reason why I got into that for me is because it was the closest thing to digging for dinosaur fossils I could come up with.
Okay.
Not that I could come up with, but I was like, oh my goodness, you guys get to go to Africa and dig fossils? Like, but at the same time, it also allowed me to do the whole human anatomy side, which, again, coming from magnet school for me, we had already just dissected several things in high school, and I was like all in it, like, okay, this is this, and this is this, okay, whatever I'm going to do, it's got to be dissecting and looking at that type of stuff, right?
Okay.
So that's how, for me, that was a fairly easy choice, because it kind of merged those two worlds. When I got to School of Engineering, same thing. We built projects and such in high school, so for me, that was kind of an easy transition. I already had worked with circuitry before, and learned the colors of the resistors and kind of sort of build radios and stuff like that. It was stuff that I already did in high school. So for me, it was like, all right, well, let's go build a more sophisticated radio, or let's build. I think I built one time for a project a patellar tendonitis reader prototype thing in college. So, I mean, again, it was stuff that I was exposed to already in high school, which, and for biomedical engineering as well, right? Now I'm really doing cadavers. Cadaver, I'm sorry. Stuff, from, real human legs and that type of thing. So you're really getting into it at that point. And that it's not for everybody, I know. And, the formaldehyde is kind of smelly. But but you mentioned exposure. I was already exposed to all of that. Okay. So when I got, and going back to kind of, again, being proactive, okay, I knew what I liked to do already, in high school. You said you went to school, you said you want to do communications because you liked the class that you did. You were exposed to it. That's really all, at least for me, it really was. I don't know if it was rocket science or anything like that. But at the same time, which again goes back to sort of our program, we factor that in, not blatantly say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Right. But what are the type of things you might like? Do you like biology? Do you like chemistry? And then we'll pull out the majors that are related to that. And then we're also matching that with the school itself to say, okay, this one has a really good chem program. You may want, you look at this one and they'll get higher ranked and all that good stuff. But
that's tremendous.
That's really all it is.
No, it's tremendous that you can take what someone's interested in and then then show them the different opportunities that are out there based on their interests. That's extremely helpful and necessary. Every leadership program that exists starts with an assessment. Let's see your strengths, and then we can tell you the career paths that align with those strengths where you can be most successful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that you majored in 3 things. You have 3 triple majored, and you still played basketball. And you said that you weren't able to go on a trip to Africa because you were practicing for the USA team?
Yes.
What exactly was that, and how difficult was that to be away?
How difficult it was to be away, I love to travel, so you could have taken me anywhere. It wouldn't have mattered, quite frankly. But that's the USA part thing was something I started getting exposed to, I think my senior year, I want to say, junior, senior year. They used to have these things, which I hope to bring back if I raise enough money. Hope to bring something like that back because I thought it was really good, again, related to exposure, where you had regional areas, and then they invited, I grew up in the D.C. area, so I went to the Virginia region or whatever it was, and you got to, and all the college coaches were sitting up, and then you basically were playing with a whole bunch of athletes, female athletes. I don't know, probably a good 100, 200 kids, right? You're doing one-on-one drills, shooting drills, everything else. So you're really showcasing what you can do. And it was a full day affair where, you did the first set of drills, and then, the college coaches, kind of selected, or I don't know who, college coaches, a group of people, let's just say. Down selected from the original 200 and cut it down to maybe 100. Then you went through the next section, and then it went from 100 to 50. And then you did another session with a little bit more detail. It went from 50 to 25. And then if you got to the last part, then the last, 25 people were, you played a pickup game, and then that was the end of the day. Okay. So the goal was to try to make it all the way as far as you can. You showcase and you working hard all day. Right. And trust me, that was a long day. But, you made it all the way to the end. So, and there, I think, is where I got noticed by the USA Basketball Association. So basically every summer then on, I was at Colorado Springs training. at the Olympic Training Center. And then, you could get selected to a team, which I did 1 year. And then we did the whole Asian tour or what have you. But yeah, so that's kind of how all that came about. At the same time, I'm trying to lighten my load up a little bit from the schools, from, regular season. So I'm trying to take summer classes and,
Exactly.
1 year I was in Colorado and I literally turned in my final while I was at the Olympic Training Center. I faxed it in. I will say thank you. I'll say publicly thank you to, Fortner for letting me, crash in her, in one of her rooms while everybody was doing whatever. The rest of the team was doing something. I had to finish my exam. So she gave me a nice quiet room. I finished it, and then we got back to the training center. I faxed it in. I was like, thank God that's done. But that was my life. Again, that's what I wanted to do.
It was what you wanted, and you found a way. Just found a way to make it happen, to get it done.
Yep.
The last thing I want to talk about is something that's really important, and a lot of athletes struggle with. I actually had a conversation recently with a young woman who is a senior in college and is trying to figure out the next steps in her life. How do athletes best transition from being this athlete who plays in front of thousands of people or a few hundred people, depending on where you go to school, to not being that person anymore? How did you do that? And what advice do you have for other athletes who are in that position now?
I think for me, I always kept it in the back of my brain that, if I make it, great. If I don't, I'll be all right. Like, it's not, okay. I made it a point, and I think this is another thing where it's kind of overlooked. Mm-hmm. I made it a point every year to go to the career fair. I made it a point. And
no, seriously, I never went to a career fair. Never, ever went to a career fair. Never.
It's not something that is. It's not something that is promoted. It's not something. I mean, doing internships. It's not something that's promoted.
Not at all.
If I wasn't in Colorado Springs, all those whatever summers, or wasn't taking classes or whatever, I had some internships potentially set up. I wasn't playing around because you never know what's going to happen. So that always at least helped solidify in my brain that, if this basketball thing doesn't work out, I'll be all right because I got a job lined up. And that's literally, for me, what happened. I mean, I got drafted in WNBA, so I had to go back and tell my employer, like, look, I got drafted, so do you mind if and they were really great about it. Again,
hold on, time out. You were already working before you got drafted?
Well, I had an offer.
You had an offer to. Oh, wow. Okay, but I'm gonna tell you, Peppi. Most people, Angie, like I didn't have anything lined up after graduation. Like I remember standing in front of the mirror the day of graduation, thinking, oh man, this is over. What am I going to do? Because basketball was the only thing that mattered. Like all I wanted to do was play and win overseas, but I didn't even know when that was going to happen, Mm-hmm. So kudos to you. And this is so key that you can have it lined up, but then decide, but then if it still works out, you can talk to your employer about it. You shouldn't not find a job, wait for basketball to work out, and then find employment. Like, right. I hope everyone caught that. Okay, I'll let you finish. Tell us about how you negotiated with your employer and what happened.
Well, I mean, May, April, whatever it was, time frame, right? So I got the offer, like, we want to give you a job, so on and so forth. And, which was great, right? Because, again, I'm like, all right, well, I didn't get an agent, first of all.
Oh, okay.
Because I was trying to be like John Stockton, and I was like, look, I'm gonna do it myself.
Really?
I was trying to do, because when I started taking classes as to what it took and whatever, how do you negotiate contracts, that type of thing, which, by the way, everybody should take classes like that, regardless if you are an athlete or not. I will put that out there off top. Take negotiation classes, take contracting or like how to design and build and whatever contracts. Class, everybody needs it, point blank, hands down. Anyways, I digress. So, all that said, because I was like, look, if John Stockton can do his own thing and he was in the WNBA doing like all this money, I think I could do my little bit. So I didn't have that. So I was like, if I didn't have any agent talking for us. If I get drafted, great. If I don't, I got a job. Like it wasn't, I wasn't sweating it hard. And then, I didn't even look at the draft. That's how I didn't even look at it. One of my old teammates, the freshman, oh my gosh, you got drafted. I was like, oh, for real?
That's hilarious. Are you serious?
That's cool. I'll be up there. Let me go call the guy who just gave me this thing, right? So I called him up. I was like, yeah, so wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but it turns out that I got drafted. So, they want me to go down next week, whatever. And he's like, oh, you know what? That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mm-hmm. I will renegotiate your contract so that you start after the season's over. So if you want to stay on, we totally understand that. No hard feelings, because clearly I'm not in shape to play ball. I would love to play ball, but I'm not. So if you decide to stay on, no hard feelings. If you decide that's not for you, we've got a job for you here lined up waiting. And so they changed the contract, negotiation, whatever language, and I did it. So, went out there, had, say I was official, and then I was like, all right, well, time to go work it out, So that's how it worked out for me. Like I said, if I did not go and make a point to have the resume ready, do a couple internships, go to all of these, employer interviews and that type of thing, practice, all that type of stuff, I don't think it would have happened that cleanly. I don't think the transition would have been that clean. But yeah.
Peppi, your story is never told. The only thing we hear about are people that go overseas, or people who go to the league, or people who don't do anything, right? There's this gaping hole in the narrative around how we transition from sport and what's the best way. This conversation has changed the conversation that I will have from here on out with student athletes who I talk to. I will be able to tell your story because I've never heard anyone tell your story, like share the experience that you had, and it is so awesome. Absolutely, absolutely awesome.
Thanks. I mean, I hope, right, that people don't get spooked off by, oh, well, you know what, she did 3 majors and da-da-da. It doesn't, that's not the point of it, right? Yep. That's just something that I wanted to do. You need to do what you need to do.
Yep.
But, take all that other stuff out and, take out even basketball, put in horseback riding, put in gymnastics, put in something else, right? You have to, 1, be proactive about it. 2, I think from where I am now in my life, the position I am in my life, that if I am able to, again, help level the playing field, I'm going to do that. Because at the end of the day, especially from the student population, and unfortunately, I think the student athlete population is very much downplayed to the point where everybody assumes that you can only do one and not the other, meaning you could only play a sport and not do well in school, or not strive to create an electric car, or not come and I'm here to tell you that is not possible. You have to put your mind to it, and you can do whatever it is. But again, you look at what you see in the papers, you look at what you see, multiple different places, from even from a standpoint of self-image, right? I remember growing up catching a lot of flack, and I mean a lot of flack, for constantly wearing Umbros or Adidas and T-shirts, and whatever. For me, I'm not going to school for a fashion statement. I'm not. And when I got to college, I was still wearing
exactly
nice T-shirts, sneakers.
Yep.
I mean, it's not comfortable, but it's also convenient, because then I don't have to then go change a whole lot more to run the practice. I had to. I will tell you this story. So this whole thing from college, from being a, trying to go to school and being an athlete, there's a whole nother side that people also don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that side is basically how it is also perceived from the academic side.
Exactly.
When you turn around and say, oh, you know what, I'm an athlete, but I'm in your class, they automatically think that you are, many, not all, many, think that you're there just to slack off. They do.
Yep.
And so for me, I would say the hardest part being at Duke was especially when I transitioned from Trinity to engineering, was to basically convince my professors, like, I'm here for the long haul. I'm not playing. I'm studying. I'm doing what I have to do. If I have to do it in the bus, half sleep,
right,
I will take the exam. Like, I'm not playing around. Like, I'm not here to waste your time. I'm not here to waste my time or anybody else's time. I mean, I had a physics professor who basically I had to stay and take a test or something like that, and I had her write me a note to my coach as to why I was late to practice because I had to take this test for her, and she was like, "This is atrocity. This is ridiculous. You're here to go to school. You're not here to play." And I had to again.
Yep.
She wouldn't know any better,
right?
But I had to explain to her, I'm like, look, they are paying for my education for me to sit in your classroom.
Exactly.
I don't mind taking the test. That's fine. I get it. But I need you to write this note for me.
Exactly.
I need you to write this note for me. I'm not playing.
Right. This is not a game. I am not trying to run sprints.
Thank you. I'm not trying to run extra sprints. You know what I'm saying? It's not a game. But they don't understand that. They think, oh, you know what? It's just all fun and games, willy-nilly. No, it's not. This is a whole another job. Like, you wouldn't show up to your job late.
Exactly.
I'm not showing up to my job late. That's my job. I need you to write a note. So people have to think about it on the other side. I will say those who don't come from that world, don't write us off. There's a lot that we can do. There's a lot. I mean, you see people, people might get mad at me for saying this, but I almost liken it to the military. Where people say, you know what, you go into the military, they're disciplined, they're hardworking, they have something to bring to the table, that. I would say treat the student athlete the same, especially one who's busting their rear end to make it through. They have the discipline, they have the knowledge, they have the drive, they have the will. Treat it the same way. It's just not rocket science. I mean, again, but you got it. The whole aspect and the whole concept has to change a little bit. So, anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
It's okay.
But there's much more to it than most people realize. But
you're absolutely right. And then maybe we can come back for a part 2 to talk more in depth about all that encompasses being a college athlete, because you're right, we skim the surface in lieu of time, but there's so much more that we can discuss. So Peppi, if people want to learn more about docents, if they want to talk to you about engineering, if they want to learn more about life, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so they can actually, so our website's up, docents.com. They can see and go in there. We're in beta testing right now, so please give us the feedback of what you think.
Will you spell that? I'm sorry, will you spell that?
DOC as in cats, ENTZ.com. We are also starting in April again, also to help level the playing field. North Carolina Combine. I'm in North Carolina, but a North Carolina Combine where I don't know if you know, but most people, if you go to combines, they're paying something like $250, $300 per kid. Which, if you don't have the money, that's kind of ridiculous. So we're leveling the playing field, make it open to anybody in the state and beyond in the surrounding states, so they can afford to come to a combine. So it's a team fee, basically. So that website is also up. So it's NCHS High School, combine.weebly.com. Also, feel free to shoot me an email. Confessions of a Student Athlete, so confession of ASA peppibrowne@gmail.com. I'm not a huge Facebook person. I am officially on there, but I'm not a huge Facebook person. But I am on LinkedIn a lot. So, please look for me on LinkedIn, Peppi Browne-Armstrong. But I welcome all feedback. I welcome all discussion. Technically, I guess I'm on Twitter too, but I'm not that good at that either, but I try. But yes, I encourage everybody, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. Happy to help.
Perfect. Peppi, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I really appreciate all the wisdom and insight. You definitely opened my eyes and created a whole new perspective about things that I didn't know. So thank you, and I'll be in touch soon. Thank you for listening to the Athletes as Educators podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and listen in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to hear how current and former elite athletes are changing the game.